Part 1. The Man Who Chased Shadows. Cherry Blossom, hello, dear learner. Welcome back to another journey of words, wisdom, and discovery. If you want to grow your English while uncovering life-changing lessons, make sure you stay with this story until the end, and sign up so you never miss the next one. Today's tale hides a secret that people spend their whole lives searching for. The secret of happiness. But here's the hook. What if happiness was not in wealth, not in success, not in applause, but already sitting quietly inside you, waiting to be noticed? The evening sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky with strokes of orange and violet. In a quiet village nestled in the valley, there lived a man named Adrian. He was respected, admired even. He owned a fine house, wore well-tailored clothes, and his shelves overflowed with shiny trophies from business contests, running races, and public debates. To anyone who looked at him from the outside, Adrian was the very picture of success. But inside, his heart was restless. Every morning, he would wake up and look at the neighbor's garden. Elias, a farmer with weathered hands and a crooked smile, worked quietly on his land. His crops grew tall, his children laughed freely, and his wife hummed soft songs as she baked bread. They had no trophies, no grand house, no luxury. And yet, the warmth of their laughter reached Adrian's window like golden light. It disturbed him. Why do they look so content? Adrian whispered to himself one dawn as he sipped bitter coffee. They have less than me, far less, and yet they live as if they possess everything. That whisper became an obsession. He watched Elias' family like a hawk, hoping to find their secret. He began comparing, measuring, and weighing his own life against theirs. The more he compared, the more he felt something missing in himself. It was as if he were chasing shadows, always grasping, never holding. One day, unable to contain his curiosity, Adrian approached Elias. The farmer was mending a wooden fence when Adrian asked, "Tell me honestly, Elias, why do you smile so much? You have no riches, no titles, no proof of greatness, and yet you walk as though you are wealthier than kings. How?" Elias looked up, eyes calm as a still lake. He wiped the sweat from his brow and said gently, "Because I do not measure my life with another man's ruler." The word struck Adrian like lightning. He blinked, uncertain, even offended. "What do you mean?" Elias chuckled softly. "You see, my friend, happiness does not grow in comparison. It grows in appreciation. If I look at your trophies, I could feel envy. But why should I? They are yours. They reflect your journey, not mine. My joy comes from planting seeds, watching them grow, and sharing bread with my family. That is my treasure." Adrian laughed bitterly. "But surely you wish for more? Surely you dream of finer things." Elias shook his head slowly. "Once, perhaps. But then I realized, no matter how far you run, if you're always chasing what others have, you'll never arrive anywhere. You'll live your life carrying a hollow basket, always empty, always unsatisfied." That night, Adrian could not sleep. Elias' words haunted him. A hollow basket, always empty. He rose from bed and looked at his reflection in the mirror. His face was tired, his eyes heavy, and the trophies behind him gleamed like silent mockeries. For the first time, he wondered, have I been chasing shadows all along? The next morning, Adrian made a decision. He would discover the true secret of happiness, not through books or wealth or applause, but by following Elias' mysterious philosophy. Yet, deep down, he feared what he might find. Because if happiness truly came from within, then everything he had built, everything he had chased, might mean nothing. And so his journey began. Sparkle's Learning Corner. I do not measure my life with another man's ruler, a metaphor meaning I don't compare my life to others. Chasing shadows, a vivid idiom describing the act of running after something impossible to catch. Notice the tense in Adrian's thought. Have I been chasing shadows all along? This is present perfect continuous, showing an action that began in the past and may still continue. Try practicing. 1. Why was Adrian unhappy despite his trophies? 2. How would you explain Elias' advice in simple English? 3. Can you retell the story so far in your own words? Part 2. The Way to Comparison. The following morning, Adrian rose before dawn. His house was silent, yet his thoughts clattered like restless horses. He dressed in his fine coat and polished shoes, then stepped outside. Across the narrow path, Elias was already in his field, bare feet sinking into the cool earth, whistling as he scattered seeds. Adrian frowned. How could a man sing while doing such simple labor? "Good morning, Elias," Adrian called. The farmer looked up, his face bright. "Good morning, neighbor. Come, would you like to help me plant?" Adrian hesitated. His soft hands had never touched the soil. His shoes were too clean for mud, yet curiosity tugged him forward. Slowly, he stepped into the field. The soil clung to his shoes, and he felt awkward bending down. But Elias guided him with patience, showing how to scatter seeds gently, so the wind had carried him into the earth. "Tell me, Elias," Adrian asked after a while, "don't you ever feel tired of this? Don't you wish for more like the things I have?" Elias smiled. "Of course I feel tired, but tiredness is not unhappiness. And as for wishing, no. I used to, until I realized wishing for another man's life is like carrying a heavy sack of stones that are not mine. Why should I?" Adrian looked at his own hands, soft and trembling. He thought of his trophies, his wealth, his endless striving. Were they his stones? Heavy, impressive, yet exhausting? Later that evening, as Adrian walked home, children from the village ran past him barefoot, laughing as though the world itself were a game. He stopped, astonished. How can they be so happy with nothing? He thought. His own childhood had been spent in competition, winning, proving, striving. He had never run just for the joy of running. That night, he stared again into the mirror. His reflection seemed older, lonelier. The house around him was silent. The trophies stood tall, but none of them laughed, none of them sang. And suddenly, a strange thought pierced his mind. Perhaps I had built a palace without windows, rich on the outside, but dark within. The next morning, Adrian returned to Elias. "Teach me," he said simply. The farmer looked at him with a knowing smile. "Very well, but be warned. The first lesson is the hardest. You must stop comparing. Stop looking at my garden, my children, my bread. Stop measuring your worth with my ruler. Only then will you begin to see your own treasure." Adrian swallowed hard. Stop comparing? It sounded simple, yet he already knew it was like asking a thirsty man to stop drinking. His whole life had been built on comparison, outshining others, collecting trophies, being the best. Without comparison, who was he? The challenge had begun. Sparkle's Learning Corner noticed Elias' line. Wishing for another man's life is like carrying a heavy sack of stones. This is a simile, a comparison using like or as, painting a picture of unnecessary burden. Also pay attention to Adrian's thought. Perhaps I have built a palace without windows. This is a metaphor suggesting he created wealth, but without joy or openness. In English, we often use contrast to highlight meaning. Elias says, tiredness is not unhappiness. This structure helps separate two ideas that people often confuse. Backhand index pointing right, try practicing. 1. How did Adrian feel when he tried to plant seeds with Elias? 2. Why does Elias compare envy to a sack of stones? 3. Can you make your own metaphor in English about comparison or happiness? Part 3. The mirror of envy. The days that followed were restless for Adrian. He tried to obey Elias' words. Stop comparing. Stop measuring your worth with another man's ruler. But the habit clung to him like a stubborn shadow. At the market, when he saw Elias' wife selling loaves of bread with a smile, Adrian immediately thought of his own dining table, covered with silver plates, yet empty of laughter. His heart tightened. When he passed Elias' children chasing butterflies, he remembered his own youth spent memorizing speeches and practicing debate. His father had praised him, yes, but only when he won. He could not recall a single day when he laughed so freely. Comparison followed him everywhere, whispering like a snake in the grass. Look at them. They are happier. They are freer. You, with all your wealth, are still less. One evening, unable to bear it, Adrian went back to Elias. He found the farmer sitting on his porch, sharpening an old tool, his eyes calm as dusk. Elias, Adrian burst out. I have failed. You told me not to compare, but everywhere I look, I compare. It is impossible. Elias looked at him with quiet patience. Did you think breaking a lifetime's habit would be easy? Adrian groaned. But how do you do it? How do you stop envy when it creeps into your mind like an unwelcome guest? The farmer set his tool aside and spoke slowly. Let me tell you a story. Once there was a crow who saw a swan by the river. The swan's feathers were white and shining, and the crow thought, "Surely the swan is the happiest bird in the world." The crow went to the swan and said so. But the swan replied, "No, my friend. I once thought I was the happiest until I saw a parrot with green feathers. Surely he is happier than I." So the crow went to the parrot, who said, "No, I thought I was the happiest until I saw a peacock covered with every color." Finally, the crow went to the peacock, who sighed and said, "I live in cages, displayed for men to stare at. I am admired, but I am not free. Do you know which bird is truly happy? The crow. He is free to fly anywhere." Adrian listened in silence. The story was simple, but it struck deep. Elias continued, "Do you see? Every creature that compares believes someone else has the better life. But happiness is not found in the feathers of another. It is found in the wings you already have." Adrian felt a sting in his chest, half shame, half awakening. For years he had envied others, without realizing that perhaps someone, somewhere, envied him too. And still, none of them were content. That night, Adrian returned home and stood before his mirror once more. His trophies glimmered behind him, reflections of battles fought and won. Yet for the first time, he whispered his reflection, "What if the trophies are feathers? And what if freedom is something else entirely?" The question echoed in his mind as he drifted into uneasy sleep. The lesson had begun to take root. But Adrian's battle with envy was far from over. Sparkle's learning corner. Elias' line, "Happiness is not found in the feathers of another. It is found in the wings you already have." A metaphor teaching us that joy comes from appreciating what we already possess. Notice the verbs. Envy creeps into your mind like an unwelcome guest. Here, personification gives envy human qualities, making the language vivid. The phrase half shame, half awakening is an example of parallel structure, balancing two contrasting emotions in one sentence. Backhand index pointing right practice questions. 1. Why did Adrian feel envy in the market? 2. What is the moral of Elias' crow and swan story? 3. Can you retell the story of the birds in your own English words? Part 4. The first seed of gratitude. The morning sun spilled golden light across the valley. Adrian rose early, restless after a night of uneasy dreams. Elias' words still echoed in his ears. Happiness is not found in the feathers of another. It is found in the wings you already have. But what wings did he have? What treasures had he overlooked? Determined to find out, Adrian returned to Elias that very morning. He found the farmer kneeling in his garden, watering young sprouts. Elias looked up with a smile. "Ah, Adrian, did the crow and the swan keep you awake?" Adrian chuckled bitterly. "They did, and now I see I have wasted half my life envying others. But tell me, Elias, if not comparison, then what? How do I fill the empty space it leaves behind?" Elias stood and brushed the soil from his hands. With gratitude, envy and gratitude cannot live in the same heart. One chokes the other. So each day, choose what you will water. Adrian frowned. "Gratitude? You mean just saying thank you?" The farmer laughed softly. "No, gratitude is not a polite word. It is a way of seeing. Try this. Tonight, before you sleep, name 3 things in your life you are thankful for. Not tomorrow's dreams, not someone else's gifts. Only what is already in your hands today." Skeptical but curious, Adrian agreed. That night, he sat at his desk, staring at a blank page. His mind immediately drifted to Elias' cheerful family, to the laughter of children, to things he did not have. He clenched his jaw. "No, only what I have." He wrote slowly. 1. My health. Though tired, I have strength in my body. 2. My house, a roof that shelters me. 3. My mind, the ability to think, to learn, to question. When he finished, the words looked small, almost laughable. And yet, as he read them aloud, something shifted. A soft calm, like a candle lit in a dark room, began to glow inside him. For the first time in years, Adrian slept peacefully. The next morning, he woke refreshed and almost light. He walked through his house and noticed the silence did not feel as empty. He saw the sunlight dancing on his trophies, and instead of seeing hollow victories, he thought, "These remind me of discipline, of effort. For that, I am grateful." Later, he passed Elias' children playing again. For once, he did not feel envy. Instead, he thought, "Their laughter is beautiful. And though I have no children, I have time to share with others in my own way." That evening, he returned to his desk and wrote 3 more things. Each day, the list grew. Each day, the candle burned brighter. Elias watched from across the field and smiled. The first seed had been planted. Sparkle's learning corner. Envy and gratitude cannot live in the same heart. One chokes the other. Here, Elias uses contrast to show how 2 emotions fight for space in our minds. A soft calm, like a candle lit in a dark room, began to glow inside him. This is a simile, comparing inner peace to a candle's light. Adrian's list used the present simple tense. I have strength. I have a roof. I have the ability. The present simple emphasizes what is true right now, not in the past or future. Backhand index pointing right practice questions. 1. What 3 things did Adrian write in his first gratitude list? 2. Why did gratitude feel like a candle in a dark room? 3. Can you write 3 things you are grateful for today in English? Part 5. The test of humility. Adrian's gratitude practice continued for several weeks. Each night he wrote 3 things. At first, they were obvious: his house, his meals, his books. But as days passed, his eyes sharpened. He began to notice small things he'd ignored before. The coolness of water on a hot afternoon, the comfort of a stranger's smile, the quiet strength of his own breath. Yet, deep inside, one enemy remained: pride. One afternoon, as Adrian walked through the village square, he saw Elias and a group of farmers struggling to lift a heavy cart stuck in the mud. Their clothes were smeared, their hands rough, their brows dripping with sweat. Adrian stood at the edge, his fine coat spotless, his shoes polished. He hesitated. To step forward meant dirtying himself, lowering his dignity. Would people laugh if they saw the great Adrian pushing a cart like a common laborer? But then he remembered Elias' words. Gratitude is not a polite word. It is a way of seeing. He sighed, pulled off his coat, and stepped into the mud. The farmers looked surprised, then grinned. Together, they heaved the cart forward until it rolled free. Everyone cheered. Adrian's hands were caked with dirt, his shoes ruined, and yet he felt lighter than he had in years. One of the farmers clapped him on the back. "Adrian, never thought I'd see you like this. You're one of us today." The words warmed him, but then a whisper rose in his heart. Yes, one of them, but better, still better. After all, I chose to help. I did not have to. That night, Adrian wrote his gratitude list, but the words tasted bitter. He realized his pride had returned, hiding beneath his good deed. It was not enough to act humble. He had to become humble. The next morning, he went again to Elias. The farmer listened quietly as Adrian confessed his struggle. Elias smiled. "Ah, you have discovered the second thief of happiness: pride. Gratitude without humility is like water in a cracked pot. It leaks away. Do you wish to learn how to mend the pot?" Adrian nodded eagerly. Elias leaned closer. "Then, tomorrow, come with me to the well at dawn. There, humility will teach you what pride cannot." Adrian agreed, though his stomach tightened. Something told him that this lesson would not be easy. Sparkle's learning corner. Gratitude without humility is like water in a cracked pot. This is a proverb-like metaphor, teaching that pride empties gratitude. Notice Adrian's thought. Yes, one of them, but better, still better. The repetition here shows how pride whispers, even when hidden. The villager's line, "You're one of us today," uses inclusive language, showing belonging and acceptance. Backhand index pointing right practice questions. 1. Why was Adrian hesitant to help the farmers at first? 2. How did pride return even after he helped? 3. Can you explain Elias' metaphor about the cracked pot in your own words? Part 6. the Well of Humility. At the break of dawn, Adrian walked with Elias to the village well. The air was cool, the grass wet with dew, and the birds had only just begun their morning songs. Elias carried 2 wooden buckets balanced on a pole across his shoulders. When they arrived, a line of villagers was already waiting to draw water. Women with scarves, barefoot children, and tired men nodded politely as Elias took his place at the end of the line. Adrian, however, felt his chest tighten. The well was a public place. Everyone here would see him. What if they whispered? What if they laughed at the sight of a man with polished shoes, carrying water like a servant? Elias handed him one of the buckets. "Today, you will carry water to the houses at the far end of the village." Adrian's pride screamed inside him. His lips parted protest, but Elias' calm eyes silenced him. Swallowing hard, Adrian gripped the bucket. The villagers ahead drew their water, filling jars and pots. When Adrian's turn came, he lowered the rope clumsily, almost dropping it. Some children giggled. His face burned, but he pulled up the heavy bucket, water sloshing, and set off down the dusty path. The weight cut into his hands. His arms ached. By the time he reached the first house, his shoulders trembled. A woman opened the door and smiled. "Thank you, sir." She took the bucket as though he were no different from any other villager. Something cracked inside Adrian. No applause, no recognition, just a quiet thank you. House after house, bucket after bucket. He worked until sweat ran down his back. His shoes were soaked and his hands blistered. His pride crumbled with every step. Finally, when the sun was high, he collapsed beside Elias under a tree. He gasped, Why must I do this? What lesson hides in this pain?" Elias handed him a cup of water. "You asked how to defeat pride. This is the way. Pride feeds on recognition, on applause, on reward. But when you serve with no one watching, when you work with no reward, pride starves. Only then can humility grow." Adrian drank slowly. His body ached, but strangely his heart felt lighter. The quiet thank you from the villagers echoed in his ears, not as trophies, but as reminders that life was not about being above others. It was about standing among them. That evening, as he wrote his gratitude list, he added something new. "Today, I am grateful for blisters. They taught me that pride cannot hold water, but humility can carry joy." Sparkle's Learning Corner. Pride cannot hold water, but humility can carry joy. This metaphor links back to the cracked pot idea. Pride leaks. Humility contains. Notice the phrase, something cracked inside Adrian. This does not mean physically, but emotionally. It's a metaphor for his pride breaking. The sentence house after house, bucket after bucket, is an example of repetition for rhythm, making the hard work feel endless. Backhand index pointing right practice questions. 1, why did Adrian feel ashamed at the well? 2, what does Elias mean when he says pride stars without recognition? 3, can you describe a time when you did something without reward and how it felt? Part 7, the chains of the past. Adrian's nights grew calmer as gratitude softened his envy and humility loosened his pride. Yet there was still a shadow lurking inside him, a weight that neither lists nor buckets could remove. One evening, Elias invited Adrian to sit by the fire. The night air was cool, and sparks floated into the dark like tiny stars. After a long silence, Elias asked softly, "Tell me, Adrian, whom have you not forgiven?" Adrian stiffened. His jaw tightened. "Forgive? I have no enemies." Elias' eyes twinkled sadly. Everyone has someone. Sometimes it is not another person. Sometimes it is ourselves. Adrian's chest ached. Memories surged like a flood. His father's stern voice demanding perfection. The friends he had abandoned in his climb toward success. The younger version of himself who had once been innocent, carefree, and whole. He had buried those wounds under trophies, but they had never healed. He looked into fire and whispered, "I cannot forgive my father. He never praised me unless I won." Every scar I carry began with his voice. Elias placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then you are still carrying him inside you. Forgiveness is not about saying he was right. It is about freeing yourself from the chains he left behind." Tears stung Adrian's eyes. He wanted to resist, but the truth cut too deep. Elias continued, listen carefully. Happiness does not bloom in soil filled with bitterness. If you do not forgive, you remain tied to the very pain you hate. Forgive your father, not for him, but for you, and forgive yourself, Adrian. Forgive the years you lost chasing shadows. That is the only way forward. Adrian broke then. The fire blurred as tears rolled down his face. For the first time, he let himself grieve, not as a polished man of success, but as the boy who had once longed for love. He wept until the chains inside him loosened. Later, as the flames died, he whispered, Father, I release you. And Adrian, I release you too. The night grew still. And within that stillness, something incredible happened. For the first time in his life, Adrian felt free, not from others, not from the past, but from himself. That night, when he wrote his gratitude list, his words were simple yet powerful. I am grateful for forgiveness. Tonight, my heart is light. Sparkle's learning corner. Elias' phrase, forgiveness is not about saying he was right. It is about freeing yourself. This uses contrast to clarify meaning. The metaphor chains of the past symbolizes emotional burdens that tie us down. The sentence, not from others, not from the past, but from himself, uses parallelism for dramatic emphasis, showing layers of freedom. Backhand index pointing right practice questions. 1. Why was Adrian still unhappy, even after gratitude and humility? 2. What does Elias mean by saying forgiveness is for you, not for them? 3. Can you think of someone, or even yourself, that you need to forgive to feel lighter? Part 8. The light within. Weeks passed. Adrian walked differently now, not with the stiff pride of a man displaying his trophies, but with the quiet ease of someone who had laid down a heavy burden. Villagers noticed the change. He greeted them with warmth, carried water without hesitation, and even played with the children in the square. But inside, one question still lingered. Was this truly happiness, or just the beginning of it? One evening, as the sun sank into the horizon, Elias invited Adrian to walk with him into the fields. The air smelled of earth and wheat. Fireflies glimmered like scattered stars. Adrian, Elias said gently, you have practiced gratitude. You have tasted humility. You have begun forgiveness. Now tell me, what is happiness? Adrian hesitated. He thought of his old life, the applause, the victories, the endless comparisons. He thought of his new life, the blisters, the tears, the laughter of others. Slowly he answered, happiness is not in what I win. It is in what I notice. It is not in what I own. It is in what I share. And it is not in being above others. It is in walking beside them. Elias' smile deepened. Yes, and most of all, happiness is not found outside. It is born inside. Contentment is not a prize to be hunted. It is a seed already planted in your heart. All you had to do was stop stepping on it. Adrian's chest swelled. For the first time, he felt the truth as clearly as the air around him. All his life, he had chased shadows, comparing, competing, grasping for proof. But the light he sought had been within him all along, waiting for him to clear the soil of envy, pride, and bitterness. That night, as he wrote in his journal, he did not make a list. Instead, he wrote a single sentence. Happiness is not a destination. It is the way I choose to walk each day. Years later, when villagers spoke of Adrian, they no longer mentioned his trophies. They remembered his kindness, his laughter, and his steady presence. They said, he was a man who discovered happiness not in the world's applause, but in the quiet strength of his own heart. And in that legacy, Adrian finally lived free. Sparkle's learning corner. Elias' line. Contentment is not a prize to be hunted. It is a seed already planted in your heart. A powerful metaphor, showing happiness as something we nurture rather than chase. Adrian's closing words, happiness is not a destination. It is the way I choose to walk each day. Here, happiness is described as a journey, not a goal. Notice the contrast between the world's applause and the quiet strength of his own heart. This highlights the difference between external approval and inner peace. Backhand index pointing right practice questions. 1. How did Adrian's understanding of happiness change from the beginning to the end of the story? 2. What 3 interchanges helped Adrian find peace? 3. Can you create your own sentence, starting with happiness is not, it is? Cherry Blossom, dear learner, thank you for walking through this full story with me. If you enjoyed it, remember to stay with us, subscribe, and keep practicing English through stories. Because like Adrian, your journey is unique, and happiness grows as you grow.